They say knowledge is power, and this is seldom more true than in war. To know your enemy's plans and deny them the same privilege is to stack odds in your favour. Military cryptography has a history as long as any signal corps, from the simple ciphers used by the ancients to more complex electromechanical devices of the 20th century. One such machine was the German Enigma. It resembles an over-engineered typewriter, but the encryption it provided for the Nazis proved tough to break. Plain text is passed through a scrambled pathway, a series of rotors set to a secret configuration each day. Orders, locations, or mission details could all be safely transmitted over radio with no fear of interception. Without knowing the machine's state, translating a coded message back into a readable form would have been almost impossible. Almost. Its complexity was such that mere manpower could not solve it within any reasonable time. To crack the code would require a mechanical mind instead. The first successes in cracking Enigma belonged to the Polish Cipher Bureau, but much of the wartime glory is attributed to one man: the brilliant mind of Alan Turing. Known for his pioneering work in the emerging field of computer science, he found himself at Britain's code-breaking centre at Bletchley Park. It was here that he and his team achieved the impossible. A machine was made that could unravel the German ciphers, leaving their private plans laid bare. No doubt, the efforts spent breaking Enigma saved lives and shortened the war. A secret success that shaped the Allied victory. The world would never be quite the same after 1945. Nuclear punctuation marked the start of the modern age. The computer's role in war had only just begun. Many of us have grown up with video games. But video games grew up during the Cold War. This is a story about how the modern age took shape, and how new technology and political tension gave rise to the games we play today. From mechanical minds to the pursuit of other worlds, huge nuclear arsenals, and their alarming potential. Video games and war have more in common than you think. The aftermath of World War II saw Europe in ruins, and two new superpowers emerged in the stead of the old: the Soviet Union and the United States. Former allies left standing in a divided world, rife with paranoia and espionage. An inevitable struggle for power had just begun. Having proven their wartime worth, computers found their way into an academic setting. Governments were keen to invest in technology, lest they be left behind. Turing's work on Enigma was shrouded in secrecy, and so he quietly resumed his role in computing research. With no codes left to break, he instead sought an answer to a question that has dogged the minds of philosophers and engineers alike. Can machines think? Turing's approach to artificial intelligence was a pragmatic one. A convincing opponent need not think like a human, only behave like one. He devised a method to evaluate AI ability, a blind test in which a neutral party poses questions to both a computer and human participant in an attempt to discern which is which. He called it an imitation game, but we know it better as the Turing test. The game a veil between machine and mind. The Mechanical Turk was a marvel of a machine built by Hungarian engineer Baron Wolfgang von Kempelen. A formidable opponent, this metal man best flesh with a clockwork efficiency. It was all a fake, of course, but the idea of an automaton opponent, a thinking machine, was fascinating. Artificial intelligence is a natural application for a game like chess. albeit a very challenging one. Simulating a chess board is easy. 64 squares, 32 pieces, 16 for each of the two players. Implementing the rules is a little trickier, but still feasible on early machines. Grids and rules are concrete, logical, a natural fit for a computer's memory. More difficult is a simulation of not just the game board, but an opponent. The game grows in complexity as it's played. Decisions, strategy, hundreds of possible moves compound into trillions in just a few turns. The first chess-playing programs appeared in an academic setting. Alan Turing wrote one during his time at the University of Manchester. Dubbed TurboChamp, it started life as an algorithm without a computer, a theoretical implementation only, but a working one nonetheless. In 1951, Christopher Strachey developed a program to play the simpler game of drafts, and Dietrich Prinz implemented a practical chess algorithm that could solve mate-in-two problems. Computers of this era were slow, taking minutes or hours to deliberate all available permutations. But these early programs sowed the seed for later AI routines, including those that found their way into video games. Hunt the Wumpus was originally written in the BASIC programming language in 1972, and was later adapted for a number of other platforms. The premise is straightforward. You are in a labyrinth comprising multiple chambers, one of which is occupied by a monster. As the title of the game implies, you must navigate the maze, avoiding hazards such as bottomless pits and bats, and hunt the Wumpus. The catch is that you must do it by smell alone. If you stumble into the monster, it's game over. Instead, you must fire your arrows blindly into an adjacent chamber. If you strike the beast, you win. But if you don't, the Wumpus will move. A very simple program, but from its few lines of code, emerge a virtual adversary. Governed by simple rules, yet affording an interesting challenge to the player. '80s Pac-Man was a hugely popular arcade title, and much of its appeal stems from its character. The yellow circle section was the star, but the four ghosts who chase him were each given names and a different behavior. All operate under three different modes: chase, scatter, and frightened. The latter limited to a brief duration after a power pill is collected. Scatter mode sends each of the ghosts to a separate corner and occurs at preset times during a level. By default, the ghosts will chase Pac-Man. And it's this mode where the individual AI routines start to make the game interesting. The red ghost, also known as Blinky, is the most aggressive, making a beeline directly for Pac-Man's position and speeding up as dots are consumed. Pinky attempts to ambush the player, targeting the position 4 squares ahead of Pac-Man's direction of travel. Light blue ghost Inky has the most complex targeting, seeking the tile opposite the red ghost's position relative to Pac-Man. Effectively a pincer maneuver designed to trap the player. Finally, the orange ghost Clyde will target Pac-Man directly, until he gets too close, in which case he'll retreat to his maze corner instead. These 4 independent AIs give each of the ghosts their own behavior, and by extension, their own personality. Today, computer opponents are a little more developed. Far from perfect, but still capable of some surprisingly human maneuvers. They perform best in games with a rigid rule set with